So traffic finally died down. It's the best time to get around West Los Angeles. After dark. Just gonna go for a quick loop. Take a look around. Stay practiced. Get away from cars whenever possible. New development, I finally got a license plate. See, that's why I get in front. Otherwise I'd be sitting at that light like I do every single time. Yeah, so I got a license plate, so I'm not driving around with a pull me over sticker on my back. It already happened once. I escaped without a ticket. Too much harassment. I didn't want to take my chances on a second turn. So if anyone's watched any of the other videos, you know that I'm new to this motorcycle thing. Don't really know what I'm doing yet. I'll take some time. But as I learn things, I like to share them in case somebody else who's learning can benefit from my failure. So this past weekend, I went on a long ride to Mulholland and Malibu. Riding for about 3 hours or so. On my way back, road closed to get me back to the PCH, and I could have spent more time trying to get back to PCH or just going back on a couple of crowded highways. So there's a couple of points here. First one I'm going to hit on is locking up the rear brake. Because it's happened to me twice now. The first time it happened, I had the bike for just a few weeks. It's the first time I got out to the PCH. And I was just sort of exploring. Super awkward when you take a corner for the first time at speed. By the way, you roll around the city, go to your MSF course, but the first time you start to try to lean the bike over in a corner, it feels pretty awkward and pretty insecure. And then, like anything else, after a couple repetitions, you start to get much more comfortable. But that's besides the point. I just, did my first run through canyon roads at very low speed. Trying to get over the freak out phase, which I think I did. I got a little too comfortable, go back in the PCH, and I was doing about 60 to 70 miles an hour. Getting through traffic and around traffic, which itself is a good thing, it's safe, but I get ahead of traffic, and there's corners there like anywhere else. It's a busy road, especially on the weekends, and as I was approaching a right-hand bend in the road, it wasn't a corner because it's a highway after all. As I was approaching a right-hand bend at, like I said, 60 to 70 miles an hour, I just started to see a white van pull out into the road. He crossed this, it's a 2-lane road at that point, crossed the first lane and was drifting into the second lane. In the high-speed lane, if you will, the left-hand lane, if you will. Anyway, the van drifts out in front of me, and I go hard on the brakes. I'm completely paranoid about locking up the front brake, because to me that means I'm going to fly over the handlebars or lose control. So, you know, that's already sitting in the back of my mind. And so, of course, I go a little hard on the back brakes than I should. And I'm approaching the van. At a fairly high rate of speed, and I go into a skid. Back tire starts skidding. I'm approaching the van. I'm going to hit the back of it if I don't do something else. So I go to the right-hand lane, because at this point I'm putting my brakes on. I don't know who's coming up behind me. And it wasn't the best time to start checking mirrors. And there is a little median separation between two sides of the road. Has some grooves printed in it, and I just veered left in a skid until I came to a stop, or a very slow roll. I can't remember it per se. And it was okay. I mean, what happens is you start to notice, first thing you notice when you go into a skid, or at least what I noticed was, you notice that the back end starts to drift back and forth. It stops moving in a straight line. You notice the back end goes loose, and it starts to wag, almost like a dog wagging its tail. And that's how you know you've lost traction. At least that's how I knew. And the noise, of course, which is quite obvious. And when I was in this skid, I remember reading that if you go into a skid, you lock up your rear brake to just ride it out. I kind of kept steady pressure and just made sure that it wasn't going to impact anything, which is what I did, fortunately. Everything was okay. It did freak me out, but you know, I think I was asking for it. I really didn't have any business flying ahead of traffic like that, you know, in the right-hand lane, knowing on that sort of day, on that sort of road, that people just don't pay attention. They drift out in front of you. So that was the first time. This past weekend, as I mentioned, ran for a few hours. I was fatigued, decided to take the highway home. It was packed. My exit was coming up pretty soon, so I wasn't in the leftmost lanes, which is probably the safest place. Is less stop and go in the leftmost lanes. But to be honest, traffic this dense, you know, there is less, but not much less. And I was getting off my exit pretty soon. And I'm not sure exactly what distracted me, but it was definitely a fatigue factor. And I put the brakes on. I was probably looking at my rear view at the time, you know, because I'm always trying to watch who's coming behind me. And you have to try to find a balance between what's going in front of you and behind you, which is quite difficult at times. How you doing? once again, I was too hard on that back brake, and I noticed the same thing, the noise. You can feel the instability from the rear, almost like the back tire is wagging back and forth. I knew into a skid again. Somebody's fooped. I knew into a skid again, and detracting a little bit of attention from all the onlookers and the slow traffic with the windows down. I carried on without incident. So, if you're like me and you fear locking up the front, which I think is a valid concern. When I was younger, I just got used to messing around and dragging a rear tire. I know it's a bicycle, very, very different, but I think the sensation is just more natural to me. I really can't recall, even on a bicycle, ever locking up the front wheel, other than impacting something, which I've certainly done. Then you go over the bars, but I think locking the front up is very unfamiliar, and I fear it. So if you're like me, you're a little heavy on the rear brake. It's not the end of the world. Keep steady pressure, lighten up on it if you can, but you also, want the braking force. If you can, in a split second, try to adjust. If you can put some more pressure on the front because you're not putting enough, consider that. Once again, you didn't really think clearly in situations like this, but you go into panic mode, just sort of ride it out. The bike's not going to flip over anything, it's just going to skid. And that's friction, and it's going to slow you down. Until either you hit something at a slower speed, which is good, or you, yes. Or you get around the obstacle. Or stop in time. So, watch for the skid. I've just been more mindful of putting more pressure on the front brake. Even in city driving, I'm just paying more attention to using that front brake and pushing it a little further. So I can get a feel for it. I think ideally I would get an open space and practice this in a parking lot. I think that's the best thing to do. You can lock the front at a slow speed, even 5-10 miles an hour, and do the same with the rear and progressively work yourself up so you can understand the dynamics. But I just don't have anywhere in this area to pull that off. Downside of living in the city, I mean, I grew up in a place where you could pretty much go in any parking lot and do that. It's kind of odd to be in an area when you really can't find a place to mess around a little bit like that. It is in my plans, though. I'll be moving soon to an area that's less congested. And I'll be able to mess around with that stuff more. Another thing I wanted to bring up was lane splitting. I mean, my policy, being fresh as I am, is to only go between cars when they're stopped at a red light. And I can drift through without having to deal with judging the speed of other cars and cars in motion that are looking for gaps, drifting in front of me. Yeah, there's much more complexity when the traffic's moving and you're splitting compared to when traffic stopped, obviously. So that was my policy. It was amazing how much room cars leave in front of them at red lights. You could park a bus in front of these cars. Any event, like I said, I was fatigued that day, getting tired, And I felt pretty vulnerable not splitting because people were getting a little aggressive on the highway like they always do. And there's a lot of traffic, switching lanes often, coming in front of me, getting close to me from behind. And I basically said, you know, what's the safest thing for me to do right now? And my judgment at that time was to split between the two leftmost lanes, which is accepted to be the safest place to do it in California. At least that's my understanding. The leftmost lane is a carpool lane. Motorcycles are allowed as well. And in certain parts, in certain freeways, there's a good amount of space between the division of lanes, the leftmost carpool lane and then the lane immediately to its right. In this particular area, there was simply a double line, and that double line had reflectors that were planted into the ground on either side of the double yellow lines. So I found myself splitting in this area, thinking, should I keep my tires between the yellow lines, which for me is difficult at any decent speed, especially when trying to pay attention to the cars around me. That's the most important thing, knowing what's around me. And you're just looking around a lot. And then if you get out of those, you're running over these reflectors. See these ones here, and they're similar to these here. They're a little bit big on the highway. I'm looking down on them right now, if you can see them. And it doesn't feel the most stable either. A lot of it had to do with my fear, because it was a new experience on the highway, and I always think it's a little insane to see people blowing through lane splitting like that. And I found myself doing it. I mean, so it was fine. No, I don't feel like it was particularly safe. I thought it was safer than it was to just hang out in traffic. Bad, 30 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour stop-go traffic. People making a lot of maneuvers. I just felt like it was safer. If I had to do it again, considering where I'm at, I probably would have gone the longer route, headed further north, and gotten back on the PCH, which is more sedate, and I wouldn't have to lane split like that. You realize, at least me, that certain things that freak you out in your first couple of attempts don't freak you out later on, and you actually feel and you know you're pretty safe. And I'm just not there yet with the highway lane splitting. I don't know if I'll ever be there. It's more of a principle thing for me, I think. But this stuff here, this stuff is great. I don't know if you guys can hear this shit around me, but I have one shitty concert coming out of the car to my left, and another shitty concert coming out of the car to my right. I feel like I'm in a torture chamber. So the last point to address for the evening is, for those of you who also drive cars, and like playing your music loud, have some fucking consideration for the people around you. People don't like your music. Not all the time. They don't have your taste. They have their own lives they're trying to live. They're trying to have conversations in their car. They're trying to think. There are people in this world that have recently lost family members, believe it or not, in the car next to you, and they're mourning. People have kids in the back seats of their cars that have developmental abnormalities and are very sensitive to disturbing, loud, thumping, well, any music. a fucking favor, and when you pull up to a red light, put the music down to an acceptable level. You know, so that people don't have to hear it next to you. When you're off on the road again, you can blast your ears out all you want, and believe me, I like my music loud. I like a lot of really loud, annoying music, just like the rest of you. And I'm a dick in several ways myself, but this is one point I think that'll make the world a better place. Have some fucking respect for the people around you. You're not the only person on this planet.